So we are back for a deck tech on Deflecting Palm Burn against Eldrazi Tron. As a friendly reminder, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, giving us a thumbs up, leaving a constructive comment down below, as we aim to become the most informative lightning bolt based channel here for Modern on YouTube. So a couple weeks back I did the traditional burn versus Eldrazi Tron, and I played 3 matches. Results were kind of what we expect. Eldrazi Tron is slightly to significantly favored. The change we made in this particular build is to play Deflecting Palm in the main over a couple copies of Searing Blaze. Now this is definitely skewing towards a specific matchup, but I did want to show the effects that one card, even in a couple slots, can have in matchups in Modern. Modern can be a very swingy format. Deflecting Palm can be relevant in a lot of matchups. Can be relevant against regular Green Tron, against Worm Coil Engine, can be relevant against Eldrazi Tron, can be relevant against humans, the mirror match, blue-red Thing in the Ice, or no, sorry, blue-red Phoenix, regular mono-red Phoenix. There's a lot of matchups where Deflecting Palm can be relevant. So the card that historically I've not been, it's fallen out of favor with me personally because a lot of the decks I wanted to play against during one summer, the end of the Grixis Shadow summer was like, Jund and Rock and Grixis Shadow. Decks that had a lot of ways of checking your hand and kind of negating it, with something like Stubborn Denial. So I kind of fell out of favor with this card, but against something like Eldrazi Tron, they don't have too many ways to check your hand, and generally speaking, their 2 biggest ways to shut down is Thought Knot Seer and Chalice on 2, and usually they're going to try for Chalice on 1 with their first Chalice of the Void. So, card can be very effective in the matchup, and as we'll see in the videos, it does have spots where it's probably the only card in the deck that can swing the game outside of like something like Path to Exile. So, card was very instrumental in the games we end up playing. But this card came up in discussion of the Burn Discord when I was getting ready to make the original set of Eldrazi Tron videos. People were talking about how Deflecting Palm was good against that, good against Hogak. Even some other contributors. If you look at Day 2 Dryden's latest sideboard guide, he talked about Deflecting Palm and Path to Exile and no graveyard hate against Hogak. I'm not sure how I felt about that, but maybe he's tested the matchup more than I have. But it's certainly a card that can swing things against Hogak. So it's a very good card in specific matchups and specific metas. So I figured we'd give it a try in the main deck this matchup, and we'll do a quick deck tech as a reminder of what the Eldrazi Tron matchup we were playing against, and then get into the matches. This has been John for MTG Nexus. We'll be back in 1 second. So friendly reminder, this is the kind of the Eldrazi Tron matchup we were playing against. For those of you that aren't familiar with Eldrazi Tron, don't see it a lot. This is a deck that is more of an Eldrazi Temple deck than it is an Urza deck. Eldrazi Tron has the ability to mulligan kind of aggressively for Eldrazi Temple and or Expedition Map to have Eldrazi Temple on turn 3. They also get to play a 3-of in Blast Zone, which is obviously relevant if they're able to slow down their initial aggression and then blow up our 1-drops. And then beyond that, they have a couple copies of things like Waste and Seagate. Seagate Wreckage and Ghost Quarter as kind of their utility lands, as well as Cavern of Souls, which aren't really relevant in this matchup. Beyond that, their big things are Chalice of the Void on 1, and then playing fast Thought Knot Seers and Reality Smashers to kind of close out the game quickly. Chalice on the 1 obviously can be problematic for our deck, especially if they're able to play it on the play. And then Karn the Great Creator has the ability to specifically go get Basilisk Color out of the sideboard, which can swing the race in their favor, especially when they have 4 and 5 power guys. Basically them getting a World Leaders Helix or something even bigger in terms of Reality Smasher really swings the matchup. Dismember, their removal spell choice in the main deck, doesn't get locked out by their chalices, but it is a little bit slow, and them dealing themselves damage is relevant in this matchup. Also notably though, their land mana base does not deal them damage, so we do have to deal them usually 20 points of damage if they don't draw Dismember. Beyond that, other kind of relevant cards, Matter Reshaper can be a speed bump, Walking Ballista also can be a speed bump or close out the game very quickly. Learning Walking Ballista math, especially when they've assembled Tron, is very important. Keeping in mind that on the last turn they can deal damage and dump the counters, so like a Walking Ballista for 4 can obviously represent 8 damage. so that's something to consider. And then Endbringer and All Is Dust. There are some versions that were running Ugin the Ineffable over Endbringer, and while I think that's a fine card, perfectly defensible in this deck, I think Endbringer is something that would more realistically come down on turn 3 or turn 4 in the matchup, so that's why I included the build with Endbringer as opposed to Ugin the Ineffable. And then in their sideboard, the only real cards that matter are kind of these Spatial Contortions and Basilisk Color. Ensnaring Bridge could potentially... Ensnaring Bridge and Mycosynth Elias can be important in certain spots. The problem with Ensnaring Bridge is a lot of times they need to attack us to win, so Ensnaring Bridge actually hurts them more than helps them. So the two key cards ends up being Basilisk Color, the lifelink, being very relevant in racing situations, and then Mycosynth Elias, if we're like relying on spells and they're ahead on board, can lock us out potentially. So those are the kind of the key cards to be aware of in this particular build. And then obviously Spatial Contortion comes in, kind of replacing some of these dismembers as removal spells for our creatures. Notably, it's a 2-mana removal spell against a 1-mana creature, so a lot of times you're going to get in a hit or two with your creatures anyway. So creatures, once again, are key to our success in this matchup, especially when we're on the play. And with that, let's get into the matches. Okay, we're back for match number 1 with Burn with Deflecting Palm in the main versus Eldrazi Tron. Be on the draw this game. This hand obviously has the double Deflecting Palm, which is a card we want to test, but only having one land against Eldrazi Tron's a little bit risky, especially on the draw, so I don't recall if I end up keeping this hand or not. Definitely has the upside with the Monster Swift Spears, but it is something that can easily be pitched back. Okay, I do end up mulliganing it, correctly so. This hand obviously a little bit better. You have Swift Spear into Eidolon, a bunch of true drops, so it's harder for them to lock you out of the game with Chalice on 1. So I think I end up keeping this hand and pitching the basic mountain made sense there. Opponent leads on Expedition map. We draw another land off the top, which isn't ideal, but they threaten to Tron up on that turn. Play Eidolon. They fetch Eldrazi Tron. Probably getting hit with a TKS here. Yep. Thought-Knot Seer takes Lightning Helix because the card allows us to deal with one of their creatures most easily. Go ahead and swing with everything here. Might not be correct, but creatures get negated more and more as you sit back in this game, so just kind of force the issue here. Kind of get a free block with the Thought-Knot Seer, unfortunately. And they get to turn the corner really quickly, which is one of the problems in this matchup. It's just the fact that they're able to kind of do that and still set up lethal. Deflecting Palm here, going to be showing its thing. Go ahead and Deflecting Palm them. Some 2, 5. Saves us some life here. I don't think there's anything we could have drawn out of that situation. Crack. And then draw into Lava Spike. It's possible I should have tried to leave the creatures in play in the hopes that they were only going to leave the Thought-Knot Seer back, but the reality was Smashers were going to get there eventually anyway. The only thing that we could have hoped for there was the second copy of Deflecting Palm, and that was highly unlikely, but you do see how Deflecting Palm can help swing the race sometimes in these situations. But even with a pretty good mulligan to 6, having kind of an aggressive start, even without Chalice on 1 or access to Basilisk Color, this can be a very problematic matchup, just when they're Troning up or having Eldrazi Temple. So like turn 3 Thought-Knot Seer and the turn 4 Reality Smasher is just a very hard combination for Burn to beat, and even with Deflecting Palm helping out a little bit and a good start being on the draw was very relevant in this particular game. We'll be back in a bit with game number 2. Back here for match number 2, going over a little bit of sideboarding. We boarded out all 4 copies of Eidolon, and as well as 2 copies of Searing Blaze that are remaining in our deck, and a Boros Charm for 3 copies of Path to Exile, 2 copies of Smash to Smithereens, and what is the other card that we brought in? Skullcrack, as a hedge against Basilisk Color, which some of these lists obviously play. Basilisk Color can swing the race single-handedly, as we saw in some of the previous videos when we were playing against the normalized version of Boros Burn with no Deflecting Palms in the main. So with that, we should be able to play this game. Obviously this hand's a mulligan, no lander. This hand's very good if we don't get chaliced on one and can draw another land. That's a couple very big ifs, so I'm not recalling if I kept this hand. No, I guess I didn't mulligan it. My hand just had too many risks. This hand's fine. We've got 2 lands to operate. Don't have a 1-drop creature, which is unfortunate, but Deflecting Palm, obviously the card we want to see the most. The Backup Bolt and the Skewer the Critics, which makes sense. Go ahead and pass here. That leads on Eldrazi Temple, which is unfortunate. Go ahead and bolt them at the end of turn. Get Matter Reshaper. Go ahead and Helix their face here. Suspend a Rift Bolt. Here comes a Thought-Knot Seer. Response to the trigger, we go ahead and path it. Opponent unfortunately gets to see Deflecting Palm and take it. Rift Bolt comes off suspend, put them to 5. Here comes Karn the Great Creator. I guess it just ticked it up this time. Don't want it to die to a bolt, I guess. Deflecting Palm was nice here. Basilisk Color is unfortunate. Go ahead and attack. We palm. Run them from gaining life. And then they play a Ballista onto, and then we draw Lava Spike. So Deflecting Palm is one of the key cards there. Not only did it prevent our opponent from gaining life, but it also dealt them 3 damage. So it was a 6-point life swing. Which only something like Lightning Helix would be able to do, and Lightning Helix wouldn't be as good in that situation as, you know, it would have to kill the creature there. So one of the votes in favor of something like Deflecting Palm in a matchup like this, especially when they're starting to grab Basilisk Color, enables us to kind of answer their biggest haymaker against us other than chalices. So it was obviously very important to grab to our victory in this game. We'll be back in a bit with game number 3 in this match. Alright, we're back with game number 3. This hand's pretty solid. Doesn't have a 1-drop creature, but we do have an answer to a chalice. We do have multiple different casting costs, none of which are 1, so this hand's pretty reasonable overall. So, very easy keep. Lead off on Inspiring Vantage. Suspend the Rift Bolt. It goes chalice on 1, to the surprise of no one. Suspend the Rift Bolt, hit them with the Skewer the Critics. They have Natural Tron, which is just kind of brutal. Skewer the Critics, hold up Smash here. They play their own Expedition map into things, which is kind of weird. Float the mana here after they go get Lattice. Smash that to keep ourselves from being locked out. That literally would have been a KO with a Smash to Smithereens there. Unfortunately, our hand is locked up a little bit on 1-cost spells. They're threatening to close out the game pretty quickly here. And I'm not sure why I didn't fire off Lightning Helix there. Deflecting Palm wouldn't have been very effective there. And they just kill us with Walking Ballista. So, it was nice to have the Smash to Smithereens there. Deflecting Palm, you know, if we would have tried to use it on one of the creatures, wouldn't have been very effective. But I probably should have Lightning Helix before last turn. That way we could have palmed one of these creatures. Potentially drawn another spell and seen if we could have won. But Chalice on 1, Chalice on 2 pretty much would have locked us out to anything but either Rift Bolt or Skewer the Critics. And we'd already cast 2 Rift Bolts and a Skewer the Critics. So, we were down like, what, 5 outs to try to win through those 2 chalices. So, Deflecting Palm would have been important there, but I obviously should have Lightning Helix on end step. But beyond that, That's just one of their good draws coming together. And we even had the answer for Microsynth the Lattice. Otherwise would have been locked out from casting spells. So Deflecting Palm has shown itself to be kind of valuable so far in these games, but we have a couple more matches to see just how valuable it can possibly be. Let's get into match number 2. We're back here for match number 2. Game number 1 will be on the play this time, which is awesome. Alright, so mulligan that first hand. Second hand is fine. His hand, one too many lands, then is optimal, but got a diverse casting cost of spells, can get the Lava Spike out of our hand before they can chalice us. This hand's pretty reasonable on the play. Go ahead and put that back. Go ahead and suspend that. There you go ahead, get that out of our hand. So the reason you suspend Riftbolt on one rather than casting Lava Spike is they can't chalice you on one, usually, unless they're playing like some weird build with Simian Spirit Guide, or if they happen to be playing like Gemstone Caverns and it shows up. But then you have kind of advanced warning that you need to get your 1-drop out of your hand. And then it also allows you to be able to cast Skewer the Critics this turn. But we got to get the Lava Spike out of our hand before they can chalice us. No chalice this time, just a Walking Ballista. Go ahead and Riftbolt them. They have Thought-Knot Seer here. We Boros Charm them in response because this does the most damage. Since we're not really going to be able to control the board effectively. It starts doing the thing. We go ahead and skewer them to the face. They grab Natural Tron. Get Karn. Karn grabs Basilisk Color, one of the more dangerous cards in this matchup. And they have enough mana to play and equip it, so our burn plan just likely he isn't going to work out here. Reality Smasher number 1, Reality Smasher number 2. So even if we hit like a Deflecting Palm here, we're still pretty much dead. Actually, we're dead to Exaxes here because they just attack with everything. Before the trigger would happen, even they'd be able to hit us for 9, 10, plus the ping's 11. So, more than lethal here, but that's just the power of Eldrazi Tron when it actually hits Tron. And it has some good payoffs in hand, plus the power of Basilisk Color in this matchup. We'll be back for game number 2 of match number 2. Once again, going over sideboarding here before the game gets rolling. Board out the other 2 Searing Blazes, board out the 4 copies of Eidolon here. This time I decided to board out Lava Spike. Wasn't quite sure if I wanted to board out Lava Spike or Boros Charm, mainly due to Chalice. So that's kind of the swing card with the way this build was constructed. There wasn't exactly an optimal like 6-for-6 swap or anything like that. Brought in the Press, brought in the Smashes, brought in the Skull Cracks for the very same reasons. As you saw, Basilisk Color there can be a card that swings the matchup. Lead off Inspiring Vantage here, lead off on Goblin Guy because it does the most damage, even though it does potentially give them card advantage, and we see right away it gives them a Seagate Wreckage. They play Expedition Map. We kind of unload our hand as best to our ability as we can. We're gonna get. They don't decide to chalice us here, which is interesting. I suppose when they're already behind on board, they gotta do what they gotta do. Path to get that out of the way. Not the most efficient turn for us, but does get the card out of the way. Just blast zone and get our things away. Doing it correctly during their main phase before we can untap with something like a Boros Charm. Chalice on 1 here. They play out another Matter Reshaper. Not their best draw, obviously, but still Chalice is problematic, but we're still able to kill them through Chalice on 1 with all the 2-drop spells we were able to draw. But notably Lava Spike and Path to Exile were locked out in our hand. So even when you play Chalice on 1 late against Burn, sometimes it can lock out relevant spells. So once again, Chalice is a relevant card. Being on the play helped a lot. 1-drop creatures, often a big key to being able to pressure any type of Tron variant, especially when you're on the play. It's slightly better against Green Tron than is Eldrazi Tron, as they often have. Things like Matter Shaper, Thought-Knot Seer come down on turn 2 or turn 3 to blank your creatures, unlike Tron, that has to have specifically usually Wormcoil Engine or Walking Ballista to kind of negate early aggression. So something to keep an eye on in this specific matchup, and we still haven't had a chance to see Deflecting Palm in this particular set of games, but it has been relevant in the first set of games that we played, so let's see if it pops up in game number 3. Game number 3 will be on the draw here. Obviously not the place you ideally want to be. This hand's reasonable. We have only one CMC spell. Have Deflecting Palm. I think I end up keeping this, although it's, like I said, it's not the best. Why didn't I suspend Riftbolt there? I guess I was holding up Lightning Bolt in case they had Chalice here. I guess that makes some amount of sense. Mind Stone. Comes that. Go ahead and Boros Charm them. Go ahead and cast Swift Spear here, get in for some damage. Holding up Deflecting Palm. Hopefully as our opponent has a Smasher here, which is relevant. We get them with Deflecting Palm. We are still a little bit behind in the race, but opponent goes Chalice on 1, Walking Ballista, and then we just happen to draw Boros Charm to kill them. So, Deflecting Palm there was obviously pretty key in this game. Swung the race back in our favor. It was a little obvious that we were holding up something, or our hand was just all lands. So that's one of the things, like, if your opponent can identify that you're holding up Deflecting Palm, sometimes it can be a little bit less effective, but, you know, could also be just bluffing or have nothing. So, and when you're racing burn, that is one of the nice things with something like Deflecting Palm, unless they have Thought-Knot Seer. They can't always, you know, be sure what's in your hand, and they kind of have to race hard back the other way, especially when, you know, they're hitting us for 8, we're hitting them for 2 or 3 max outside of burn spells we draw. So, and as you did note, we did have a lot of air in our hands, so, you know, and we don't have a lot of time to crack lands when they're putting this much pressure on the field, plus they lock out our 1-mana spells. So Deflecting Palm was really, really key in winning this particular match. Something to keep in mind when you're deciding whether to include Deflecting Palm in your 75, when, you know, big creature decks like Eldrazi Tron, various decks with big Tarmogoyfs, Death Shadows, all those kind of things are in the format even after something like Hogak gets banned. So that is something to consider when keeping Deflecting Palm in your 75. And as always, thank you for viewing, but we will be back here with match number 3. We're back for match number 3, game number 1. Unfortunately, we'll be on the draw this game. This hand, this hand is risky, right? Like, double Goblin Guide on the play would be insane. Our opponent's already mulliganed. So there is some consideration to keep this hand, but I think this hand is a mulligan. Yeah. Not that our 6-card hand's any better. A lot of the same problems, only 1 land. I think this is a mulligan as well. I end up keeping that hand. What was the upside of keeping this hand? I guess Deflecting Palm. I don't know. I don't agree with that keep now in post considerations. We dismember it. We have a Matter Shaper, sure. We look out and draw a land. You get to go Lava Spike here. Just in case they draw a Chalice. Now, obviously they have Tron here, which is problematic. Go 1 large Walking Ballista. So they gave us the opportunity to block. They show us Reality Smasher. Not sure why they didn't just ping the whatchamacallit out of the way, but comes Reality Smasher, Deflecting Palm gets to get them again. They drop to 3. Let me just skewer them. So once again, Deflecting Palm, kind of bailing our butts out. Maybe I kept that hand on the back of, having Deflecting Palm in the matchup and wanting to test it out, but I do think that was a bit of a risky... No, that was a very risky keep, but I suppose going to 5, even on the draw, wasn't great there. But, that hand didn't seem to have a lot of upside, other than Deflecting Palm. So the only thing I can think of is at the time I decided I wanted to try to test Deflecting Palm in game 1, see how effective it was, and obviously, 5-point swing there was very important to us not dying, and being able to basically two-shot them from 8 without having a Boros Charm. So, just showing the power of this card in this matchup is kind of insane. So, and we'll be back with game number 2 of match number 3. Welcome back for game 2. This hand's a pretty easy mulligan. Lots of 1-drop spells, pretty high upside, but once again, mulligan into a not great 6. This hand's a little bit more defensible because we have both Smash and Deflecting Palm, as well as a lack of 1 CMC spells for Chalice. I think we end up keeping this hand. We obviously want to keep Smash and Deflecting Palm. It leads on Tron. Don't know that fetching there was correct, although we do want to get our 1 CMC spells out of our hand. The hand did they keep? Put them to 4 here. Put them to 1. Draw Tron. Draw a land, and then we're dead on board. So, bricking for 1 draw step there, and then they're suddenly able to apply enough power to the board to kill us. Not much to say about that game other than sometimes, you missed on that 1 draw step that you have. Their draw wasn't particularly good. Our draw was fine on mulligan to 6, and they were able to take, obviously, a Deflecting Palm and a Smash to Smithereens. Obviously, one of the problems with Deflecting Palm, a lot of decks have abilities to look at your hand. The Death Shadow decks have the ability to Inquisition or Thoughtseize you. The Jund and Rock decks have the ability to Thoughtseize and Inquisition you. Decks like Amulet Titan have the ability to have something like Pact of Negation. Hogak even can sometimes brings in Collective Brutality or Thoughtseize against us. So, one of the things with Deflecting Palm is it is a reactive card and requires specific circumstances to be activated, and if your opponent's able to play around that, the card's less effective. That's why part of the reason I soured on the card originally was during Death Shadow Summer a couple years ago, was the fact that it was like the huge tech against Death Shadow besides Path to Exile. But the problem is, they had both, especially once the Grixis Shadow ended up being the main thing, they had both, they had multiple ways to negate it. They had things like Fatal Push the target, they had the ability to Thoughtseize and Inquisition you, they had the ability to have Stubborn Denial. So, and there weren't a whole lot of other decks that were, it was that and E-Tron, and E-Tron didn't have Karn the Great Creator at that point, so it was like Chalice, and they had to naturally draw a Basilisk color, so there was a little less emphasis on Deflecting Palm, but basically Death Shadow kind of forced the issue of Deflecting Palm being cut from the sideboards, mainly because they had so many ways to interact with it, and it was just better to be able to proactively do something like Path to Exile than, have a reactive card like Deflecting Palm. But, in a field with, a bunch of big dumb idiots right now with E-Tron and humans to a certain degree, and something like Hogak, definitely having the card floating around near 75 is not a terrible idea to have. But anyways, we'll be back here with game number 3, match number 3, and then a wrap-up. Back for game number 3. the final match with the Deflecting Palm variant of Burn. This hand is very good if we draw another land. And I do believe the upside of Guide, Path overweighs, and we also have a Smash, outweighs the downside of only having one land. You know, these Goblin Guides are going to get in for some amount of damage. Opponent reveals Karn the Great Creator. Has an Expedition map. We missed on the land drop here, but they, you know, show us whatever. We hit the land drop. You Spatial Contortion us. Do I get cute here? Yeah, I get cute here and blow up map. Which is fine, I guess. Yeah, Matter of Shaper. Path to exile that. Continue pressuring their life total. We still have Deflecting Palm here as kind of a backup. Chalice on 1 is mildly annoying, but at the moment we don't have anything that matters. Continue attack with this. They block, shoot us. And then I think they're just dead to the burn spells here. Something big, whatever it is. Chalice on 3. Because that locks out the Rift Bolt we have suspended. Makes some amount of sense. Shows Reality Smasher. Here comes the big dumb idiot. Problem is they can't afford to attack us here, and then we just draw a Boros Charm to kill them. So, opponent was priced into chalicing on 3 there because we had the Rift Bolt suspended, otherwise they would have been dead. Once again, Deflecting Palm could have played a key role here, but our opponent would have had to been able to turn the corner. They didn't have quite enough mana to play Reality Smasher and blow Blast Zone here. So, Boros Charm, obviously lethal. These 2 cards locked out in our hand. So once again, this deck can leverage Chalice on 1, 2, and sometimes even 3. So, having a diverse CMC of spells is very important, but we'll kind of cover that in the wrap-up. Yeah, we're back for the wrap-up with Eldrazi Tron versus Burn with Deflecting Palm in the main. So the main takeaway from that is that Deflecting Palm is very good against the big dumb idiots out of Eldrazi Tron, and with them really only having Chalice on 2 and Thought-Knot Seer to kind of lock it out, and often there are times they're trying to hit Chalice on 1. Deflecting Palm, I think, really kind of swings the matchup, especially in the games where you see it. It makes things like Thought-Knot Seer and Reality Smasher sometimes even a liability against them. It can negate a Basilisk Color activation for a turn. So this card is very swingy in the matchup. It can be very good, it can be very low, but usually in the spots where it's low, you're either so far behind you're going to die to anything anyway, or you're at the point where you're so far ahead that it's kind of a nice ace in the hole to kind of pull your butt out of the fire if they find something like a Blast Zone or something to clear your board, or, you know, them not being able to attack is usually a pretty good thing for us. So Deflecting Palm, at least in this particular matchup, is very good. It's better than the 2 main deck Searing Blazes that we moved to the sideboard for it. Beyond that, I mean, the matchup is probably, I don't want to give a percentage, it's definitely favorable for Eldrazi Tron with the traditional builds. Chalice on 1, very effective against your primary hate card against them, which is Path to Exile. The fact that they have the ability to get Basilisk Color with Karn the Great Creator, instead of having to run multiple copies of the card. You know, I would say their main deck versus our main deck normally, you know, if these Deflecting Palms aren't here, they're probably favored, and we have tools, you know, we get to bring in Path to Exile, Skullcrack, Smashes. They don't have a ton to bring in, but I think their primary game plan's already really good against us. They can beat us with Chalice, they can beat us just by racing us with big dumb idiots, and Deflecting Palm really changes that paradigm. You know, as I discussed in the opener here, Deflecting Palm was a discussion on the Burn Discord about the time I was getting ready to record the original set of videos that came out a couple weeks ago for the Versus series. People were debating, you know, Deflecting Palm in the main deck because of Magic AIDS on his channel having some in the main. You know, a lot of people get it into their mind that there are certain sacred cows in burn decks that you don't touch. You know, Eidolon of the Great Revel in the main deck. You don't touch Searing Blaze. You don't touch, you know, Skewer the Critics was a 4 of, or it's a none of. You know, you don't cut. How dare you cut Lightning Helix or Skullcrack to bring this other card in? You know, and I've even been guilty of that at times. You know, I held on to Grim Lavamancer in my main deck probably far longer than I should have. You know, I'm I'm historically sour on this card ever since Death Shadow Summer, so I haven't been playing this card a lot in lists. Sometimes even in mirror matches I'll forget it exists and get got by it. But I think right now, with the surge of Hogak, Eldrazi Tron, humans to a certain degree, even after the probable banning of Hogak, you're going to have things like Thing in the Ice flipping. Humans is going to make a resurgence. Jund having big dumb idiots. This is a card that can potentially pull your butt out of the fire in a lot of situations, and so main decking it or even sideboarding it is perfectly defensible in that kind of a format. The one argument people made, well, it's terrible against blue-white. Well, so's the card we're replacing it with. You know, Searing Blaze is very spotty when it's good. You know, it's not good against blue-white control, neither is Deflecting Palm to a certain degree. Deflecting Palm really only hits something like Snapcaster Mage or Celestial Colonnade out of their deck. Searing Blaze only hits Snapcaster Mage or Celestial Colonnade. And a lot of times they just win with Planeswalker ultimates like Jace Ultimate or Teferi Ultimate. You know, destroy all your lands, then kill you. So that argument kind of goes out the window. Most decks in Modern are trying to win with creatures or some type of damage base, you know, something like a Lightning Storm out of Ad Nauseam or, you know, Neoform combo. You know, there's a lot of things that Deflecting Palm can be good against, but it's a very situational card. So it's still a very low floor, high ceiling kind of card. So keep that in mind when you are playing this card in your 75. That it can definitely swing problematic matchups like Eldrazi Tron or Death Shadow in your favor. Not that Death Shadow is necessarily a bad matchup, but it's definitely a matchup that can be tricky, especially with the new Mardu Shadow builds, being able to lock out spells and such. But Deflecting Palm can be a very key card in a problematic matchup like Eldrazi Tron. So if you're seeing, you know, things like Eldrazi Tron and humans pop up in your meta, and even in this last week or so, Hogak, Deflecting Palm, certainly a card you can consider. You know, I'm historically sour on it, but even I have to admit it really swings this matchup. So if I'm seeing like a lot of Eldrazi Tron at my LGS or whatever, I'll probably be busting out my Deflecting Palms again too. With that said, I've been rambling on long enough. Basically, the verdict is, in this specific matchup, Deflecting Palm is a perfectly good card. It can help swing the matchup, whether it's in the main or in the sideboard. That's kind of for you to decide. But I did want to show, you know, people were discussing Deflecting Palm being a key card in this matchup, and I have to agree. So anyways, this has been John from MTG Nexus. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And once again, thank you to everyone for helping us hit 1,000 subscribers and getting monetized. And I'll be rolling out more content as the weeks go along. As kind of a thanks, I have a community note up right now. If you want to vote on what style of content you want to see even more of, as kind of a thank you. And I'll be using that to discuss more things with you guys over time. So I think that's the easiest way to reach you guys is the community tab. So be on the lookout for that. Don't forget to hit the notifications button so you'll be able to see that. And as always, thanks for you guys' support, and hope you guys have a great day.